Yeah, what's good, people? So I've been working on this new dubstep bass I want to show you guys. It's actually 3 different synthesizers all routed through the same combinator, and I've programmed one of my rotary knobs on my MIDI controller so I can automate a bunch of different parameters at the same time. So here's an example with the automation and without. Without and with it. And then this was what it sounds like all the way open. So you get the basic idea. It's pretty fun to play around with, and like I said, it's built with 3 different synthesizers. The first one is this square, the second one is the tone, and the third one is just a sub bass. I'm controlling about 5 or 6 parameters all with one knob, so it adds a lot of character to the sound. So let's open up a new project and we'll take you step by step on how to build this thing. First, right click, select create instrument, and then create a new blank combinator. If you haven't built this patch with me before, all it is a combinator with a line mixer inside of it, and I've added some artwork by choosing the backdrop right here. And then I save that out, and that's how I start every one of my instrument patches. So from there, I want to create a Maelstrom grainable synthesizer. We're going to bring the polyphony down to 1. I want to activate both oscillators and turn them both to my square wave. I'm going to set this octave to 2. And then turn my index up around 18. I'm going to bring my decay down. And activate this filter over here. Then on oscillator number 2, I want to bring the octave down to 2 as well. And activate the filter for that. Now on filter B, I want to give it a resonance around 43. Filter A is going to be around 33. And then I want to open both of those up all the way. And here's what we get. So that's the first synth. I'm going to call this Square Buzz, just to keep everything nice and neat and labeled properly. And then I'm going to create an M-class equalizer behind that. Parameter 1, I want to bring the frequency down a bit. I want to pull the gain almost all the way down. And then I'm going to widen up the Q a little bit. So we just took out those harsh, muddy tones in the middle. Select parameter 2. Bring the frequency up around 2.5, 3-ish. And give that a little bit of a boost. And then let's widen up the Q again. Now for the high shelf, I just want to give this barely just the most subtle bump, right? A little less than a decibel, just to clear up those highs a little. I'll call this my square EQ. And beyond that, I want to add a Scream 4 distortion. I'm going to set it over to tube. Move my parameter 1 down. And parameter 2 all the way up. So we get that nice grunge happening. Close this down, and I'm going to call this square. The only reason I'm not calling it distortion is because you see up here in my mixer, it's going to tell me the last instrument in that chain and display that in the mixer. So let's add another Maelstrom. Bring the polyphony down to 1. Set oscillator 1 and 2 to square 16. Bring the motion all the way down. And bring this all the way up. Set them both to octave 2. Set the first one to an index of 18. And just a slight little bump here. And now let's adjust our amp envelopes. I want this one with a short decay. I'll make it a little longer. And then my sustain just a little bit longer than that. Let's activate the filter and the shaper. And then on oscillator B, I want to adjust my amp envelope again. Bring both parameters down for decay and sustain to around 50-ish. And activate the filter for that. Turn on this shaper. I'm going to boost the amount just a little bit and leave it on sine. And now my filters, I want to bring these frequencies down. Now these are going to be automated, so this it's not going to sound exactly right now until the end when we get everything finished. And then let's take our spread up a little, about 2/3 of the way. And there's our synth. Now we can't really hear it until I'm going to add a little bit of modification with these LFOs. And I want to add a filter envelope with a fairly short decay. And we'll leave those the same, but let's turn the amount all the way up. Now we can hear that little accent at the beginning, kind of like wood blocks. I want to sync both of my mod envelopes. Put the rate up to 1/8 on both of them. And then let's make a few little adjustments here. Okay, let's turn this one up. Make the volume wobble a little bit. We're just making this sound a little bit more interesting. If we add an EQ, this is going to be a pretty drastic EQ, but it's going to change the sound a whole lot. I want to cut the lows. My low shelf, I'm going to bring the frequency all the way down. Bring my gain all the way down. And leave my Q around 1/4. Now the high shelf, I'm going to bring that frequency all the way up. Bring the gain all the way down. And we'll bring the Q all the way down also. Parameter 1. We're going to be removing a harsh frequency that's in the center there with a really small Q and just pull it all the way out. Frequency stays right around where it was, just a touch different. And then parameter 2, we're going to boost all the frequencies around that. So give this a bit of gain. And then widen up that Q. So now we got a harsh midtone that really makes that note stick out. Let's label these tone generator and tone EQ. And then below that, I want to create a scream for distortion. This one's also going to be set to tube. I want to bring my damage way up. Bring my param 1 down. And param 2 almost all the way down. And that's a little too harsh, so let's pull down the channel. And behind that, I want to add a second Scream 4 distortion. And this one will be set to tape saturation. Give it a bit of damage. Speed all the way up. And just adjust the compression a little. So that's our basic synth right there. At least all the oscillators. Let's label these. Tube distortion. And then now with this one I'm going to label tone just so it reads out correctly in my line mixer up top. Now let's add a Thor so we get some sub bass in there. Give it some extra power. Bring the polyphony all the way down to 1. I want to activate filters 1 and 2. And now let's bring the first oscillator down to 3 and the second one down to 2. Both of those are set to sine waves. And I want to bring my filter frequency pretty low so we really get those sub frequencies in there and nothing above there. Now, all I want to do here is bring my sustain down a little bit in my filter envelope. And then my amp envelope. I'm going to bring my decay down a little bit. And bring the sustain all the way down. And now that's set. Okay, quick mix. And we'll call that sub. I'm going to create a compressor to capture a couple of my peaks. Bring the threshold up a little bit. Bring my ratio down. The attack down about a third of the way. And the release is going to go slightly up, and then we'll give it just about a 1 or 2 decibel boost. Okay, and then right behind that, well, let's call that sub comp. And then we'll create a maximizer to give it some saturation and volume. Soft clip on and all the way up. Put that on the attack on mid and turn off the limiter. And now let's give it a little bit of a boost. About 2/3 of the way up. So now our sub's done, and that's our whole synthesizer. We'll just add a couple effects and start to control some of the parameters for a wobble. I want to call that sub so it reads out in my mixer. And let's mix these down so it sounds good and we don't clip. Okay, that sounds good. Now I want to right click on the mixer and I'm going to add an RV 7000 reverb. I'm going to put that On all first room, I want to bring my decay down. And I'm going to bring the high frequencies down also. Make sure it's EQ enabled. And then open this section up, click on the EQ. The low parameter we're going to bring all the way down. And then the frequency we're going to boost almost all the way up as high as it'll go. And then for the second parameter, let's just give this a little bit of a boost. So it's a tiny bit brighter, but without all those really high frequencies in there. Okay, now we'll call this our room reverb. And we'll come up to the mixer and start to add it into our channels. We'll give a little bit to the fuzz. And then a little bit more to the tone. Next, we're going to add a maximizer as our full synthesizer saturation. Turn off the limiter, turn on the soft clip, put that all the way up. Leave the attack and release the same, and let's give it a little boost. And now our synth is finished, aside from the parameter routing. Come up here to our Show Programmer section. I want to click on the first Maelstrom synthesizer. And I'm going to label this rotary one Demons. I want to set the first two rotaries to 1. And I want to set them to control both my A and B filter frequencies. Now this is what's going to create my real wobble. So let's see what happens when I move this knob. That's pretty cool, but I'm going to add a couple more parameters so that tone gets a little bit dirtier while the buzz wobbles up and down in frequency. And we'll add all that character. So let's choose the second Maelstrom with 4 rotary 1 parameters. The first 2 are going to be set on filter A and B frequency. And the next 2 will be set to oscillator A and B's motion. Okay, and filter A, I'm going to bring that up to 18 and bring this down to 96. The next one I want to leave at 0 and bring the second down to 109. So they both have a little bit of a different action in the frequency. And then my motion, I want to be set to -64 and 0 on both of those. So our tone just gets a little bit dirtier as we wobble the bass now. And lastly, I want to add a little bit more damage to my distortion. So I'm going to choose that, select rotary 1, to control my damage just a little bit, it's going to be all the way from 120 to 127. So it's going to be a very subtle change. But it definitely adds a lot of characteristic to the sound. So that's all of it. Let's save out this patch. I'm going to call it Ghosts and Demons. And then I like to write a note that says automate in there, or sometimes I put mod wheel, just so I know that when I open up the patch, I should probably play around with it to see what the full synthesizer is capable of. So there you have it, the Ghost and Demons bass. Have fun.
It's just science.